Breaking news tonight, a 7-year-old Oklahoma girl, Asia Johnson, has been missing for 2 months. An Amber Alert was issued for Asia in late January after her mother, Tanya Hobbs, was found beaten to death inside an RV camper. The medical examiner said Tanya Hobbs died of blunt force trauma injuries to her head, neck, and abdomen. The manner of death, homicide. Authorities charged Tanya Hobbs' estranged husband, Lester Hobbs, with her murder and the kidnapping of Asia.
We do have 2 bodies, one of an adult male and one of a young person. We cannot positively identify them at this point in time. That will be done with fingerprints and dental records, but I can tell you we have no reason to believe those bodies are anybody else's except those of the victim Asia and Lester Hobbs.
I'm Pat Malama, sitting in for Nancy Grace. Horribly disturbing facts of the case surrounding Asia Johnson, more than likely her and her stepdad, Lester Hobbs. I want to go back to Ellie Jostad before we get to the rest of the panel, who's been waiting so patiently, I know, but we're trying to get these facts out before we dissect it. Nancy Grace producer Ellie Jostad, what do we know of his criminal record? It's pretty violent, pretty extensive?
That's right, Pat. Actually, Lester Hobbs was on probation at the time of Tanya Hobbs' murder and little Asia's abduction. He was sentenced to 10 years. He served about 5 of it on a domestic battery and an assault and battery. He's also got charges he pled guilty to, like eluding an officer, resisting arrest. He's got a host of DUI and other offenses like that. He's violated protective orders in the past. And just this past, February, he was charged with a DWI, and that was the hearing that was coming up when he took off.
You know, Jessica Brown, PIO, Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, again, thank you for your time. The mother had a restraining order on him, but was he in other words, should they have not been together at that point, according to the law, when the mother died? Am I confusing you? You want me to restate that?
On that, I would hate to give my opinion on that, but certainly there was domestic violence in that relationship.
Yeah, it certainly seems so. Let's go to our callers who've also been waiting. Kathy in Illinois. Good evening, Kathy. Your question?
Good evening, Pat. It's nice to see you on.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have 2 quick questions. One, has the father been contacted, and was he, the whole 2 months that this has been going on, has he been kept informed? And can they tell what, how they died, how they were murdered, or the young girl, or who's ever in the car?
Okay, well, let's go to Jessica very quickly. We don't know cause of death at this point, correct?
Do not.
Okay. Dave Lanning, reporter KOKC News Talk. The father, there is a father, a biological father of Asia. Where has he been through all of this, and has he been informed?
The father lives in South Oklahoma City. In fact, he has spent most of the day, at least since this afternoon, in contact with state and local authorities, waiting to find out any information about this. I know some reporters have visited with him a little bit here this afternoon, but he has not actually had any kind of a full-fledged media event. They have talked to him in the past, and expect that we'll see some comments from him before the evening's over.
Jeff Gardier, psychologist and author of The Love Prescription. It's an age-old story of women continuing. I don't want to pass judgment on this family in any way, but women and their problems breaking away from violent men. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, we see that these women always seem to somehow come back to these violent men. The reason is they have self-esteem issues, they have dependent personalities, they don't feel that they can do better, they come from situations of domestic violence, and I think this was a classic case where this woman Tanya should not have been with Lester Hobbs, but felt that she had to go back because this is the guy she felt who loved her, perhaps the only person she felt who loved her. It was a very dangerous situation, and now we think her daughter is dead because of it.
Alan Ripka, defense attorney.
So where's the body?
Can you blame the law for not keeping up with this guy?
Well, you know, if the law is going to follow every single person when there's a domestic violence complaint, there's not going to be enough people to go around in law enforcement. I'll tell you this, though. When they found these 2 people, when they found Lester and Asia, unless they know it's a murder-suicide, you cannot count out someone else killing both of them and being involved in the original murder of Tanya.
Eleanor Odom, what's the likelihood this is anybody but Lester?
I think that is slim, although that's a creative argument by defense counsel. What's so sad about these cases, though, Pat, is that even if a woman or a man has a temporary protective order, oftentimes if the violent partner wants to do harm, a piece of paper won't stop them, and that's the frightening thing about these types of cases.
Dave Lanning, back to you. Let me ask you about the community. This must be just upending the people in your community.
Well, you know what? For one thing, I think they're very, very glad that it's over. It has been torturous, and this is the last thing anybody ever wants to see, not just in Oklahoma, but any place, United States, the planet, where have you. It's a terrible and tragic ending to this story. But, you know, there is a closure a little bit, particularly for the father. He did mention that today, that he wanted anything, what he wanted more than anything was closure on the situation and just know about his daughter. And he did get that today. So there is a little bit of closure here in Oklahoma for this case.
And I want to go to Angela in California. Are you with us, Angela?
Yes, I am.
Hello, your question?
Yes. Basically, I wanted to know what can we do as citizens to make Washington, D.C. stand up and listen. Does it take a march? What does it take? I mean, I've called congressmen. I've called everybody like that. I mean, I'm a victim at, I was like in my 40s of rape in my own home. And I'm 60 now, and I just, you know, I've just been seeing all this happening, and I don't know what to do.
Well, Peter Odom, you're a defense attorney, and I know you often take on cases that are unpopular with the public, but as a community, what can we do? The young lady asked a very, very important question.
She asks probably the key question in this case: how is it that something like this can happen really under our noses? Because this began really in public with a domestic violence relationship. Pat, one question that you asked earlier was about motive. And what we see, of course, I'm a former domestic violence prosecutor, what we see time and time again is that domestic violence perpetrators will use children to get at the actual target of their domestic violence needs, of their violence. And that appears to be what happened in this case. And also, he seemed to have chosen to target one child over another child, something else that you see time and time again in domestic violence cases. What can we do to stop it as a community? Keep our ears open, keep our eyes open, call the police when we see things that are concerned.
Get involved, right? I mean, as tough as it may be.
And talk to our children.
And you know, I want to ask Jessica Brown again from the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. This poor little child, my understanding is that she suffered from bipolar syndrome and also attention deficit. Is that true? And that he particularly picked on her for that reason?
I don't have confirmed that information. I have heard her biological father talking about that. I don't know if he targeted the child for that, but certainly she was easy prey for him since she was only 7 years old. The other child was quite a bit older.
Dave Lanning, do you know anything about those syndromes this child may have suffered?
Just what I have also heard from the father, that she was taking medication for being bipolar as well as attention deficit syndrome. The accusations that Hobbs perhaps attacked her, particularly trying to work on those two syndromes, I don't have any idea either.
And Jeff Gardier, can you give us some insight into how children with those kinds of problems may be targeted by angry, violent authorities and adults in their lives?
Absolutely, Pat. What we know, kids who do have ADHD or bipolar, if they're just a little bit different, when you have a very violent individual in that home, they are very bothered by that kind of behavior. Anything that will set them off or get them irritated, and they will target that child. So kids with these sorts of disorders, learning problems and so on, they become at risk. So I think that's what happened here.
Unbelievable, and through no fault of their own. Through no fault of their own.
Exactly.
Do we have time for a call? Liz, can you hear me? All right, let's take a call from Lanita in Oklahoma. Good evening, Lanita.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Your question?
Now, the reason he targeted that child is because it was not his. The first child, the older child, was supposed to have been his.
Well, I don't know. I'm wondering about that. Let's ask Ellie Jostad, Nancy Grace producer. Was the older child his child?
I'm not sure about that, Pat. I was under the impression that both children were from a previous relationship.
Right.
Norman police tell us that they received that call around 2:46 this afternoon from someone saying that a car matching the description of the one that Lester Hobbs and Asia Johnson disappeared in more than 2 months ago was found here near Lake Thunderbird.